Hi, thank you for joining us. I'm Vicki Goodman, and on behalf of UCLA's Friends of the Semel Institute for Neuroscience and Human Behavior at UCLA and the Resnick Neuropsychiatric Hospital Board of Advisors, it is my pleasure to welcome you to today's Open Mind screening of the new MTV documentary film, Each and Every Day. This groundbreaking film from Peabody Award-winning filmmaker Alexandra Shiva, done in partnership with the JED Foundation, profiles 9 young people who have attempted suicide or had suicidal ideations as they share their experiences and the ways they have sought help. The 9 subjects, who span across race, ethnic, religious, socioeconomic, and regional background, share their personal stories in an intimate and engaging conversation that goes deep into the fastest growing epidemic among teens and young adults today. Following the film, which has a running time of 1 hour, our panel of esteemed filmmakers and mental health experts will join us for a 30-minute discussion about teen mental health and suicide prevention. Due to the length of today's program, there will not be a question and answer session. We are honored to have on our panel today, in alphabetical order, Dr. Joan Asarnow, Professor of Psychiatry and Biobehavioral Sciences at the David Geffen School of Medicine at UCLA. She's also the director of the Youth Stress and Mood Program and the director of the SAMHSA-funded Center for Trauma-Informed Suicide and Self-Harm Treatment and Prevention. Sheila Nevins, multiple Emmy Award-winning producer, currently the executive producer at MTV Networks and the executive producer for Each and Every Day. Alexandra Shiva, award-winning director of this film and How to Dance in Ohio, which the Friends were honored to screen at an Open Mind program in 2016. And lastly, Dr. Victor Schwartz, medical director to Each and Every Day, past medical director of the JED Foundation, and CEO and director of Mind Strategies, and moderator for today's discussion. Special shout out to Dr. Schwartz for bringing this film to our attention and connecting us with the filmmakers. We'd like to thank all of our panelists for taking the time from their extraordinarily busy schedules to share their knowledge and expertise with us today. A few announcements before we get started. The discussion portion of this program is being taped and will be available for viewing on the Friends of Semel website, friendsofthesemelinstitute.org, where you will also find our video library of past presentations and a calendar of upcoming events. Please mark your calendars for our inaugural Open Mind Film Festival for Mental Health for high school students on May 6th, 5 p.m. May 12th, also 5 p.m., Where Reasons End, the new book from award-winning author and Princeton professor of creative writing, Yu-Yun Lee, who will be joined in conversation by Dr. Michael Gitlin, Distinguished Professor of Clinical Psychiatry at UCLA. And on May 13th, 5 p.m., WOW 2021, our fundraising event hosted by the amazing Lisa Kudrow with UCLA preeminent faculty and Dolly Parton, Ava DuVernay, Mindy Kaling, Landon Donovan, and People Magazine's editor Dan Wakeford, with People Magazine, our media partner. And now, sit back, enjoy the film, and we will be back on the other side. Thank you so much.
Hi, everyone. I'm Dr. Victor Schwartz. I'm a psychiatrist and a clinical associate professor of psychiatry at NYU and was an advisor to this film. I'm here with my friends and colleagues, Sheila Nevins, who is the executive producer of the film, and Alexandra Shiva, who was the director, and Joan Asarnow, who is a professor at the Geffen School of Medicine and focuses on suicide prevention and treatment of youth. She was not, though, involved in making the film. So we have about 20 minutes or so to try to talk about this and get some reactions from all of you to the film. But Sheila, you were the person who really birthed this idea. Maybe just to help set the table, you could explain a little bit about what made you feel that you wanted to make a film about youth suicide. How did that happen? And maybe what did you learn? And what were some of the challenges in doing this? It took a couple of years to get it done.
Took a very long time to get it right. But you were very helpful. I wanted to do it because I knew a number of kids and a number of friends' kids who had terminated their life for apparently no reason at all. And I knew that there was a way to use television in a way to reach out. But I had 3 failed attempts before I got to Alexandra. I couldn't get it right.
Failed, just to be clear, failed attempts at making the film.
Well, I failed at a lot of things, but I certainly failed at making the film 3 times. Once it was full of too much suicide ideation. Once the kids had told the story so many times that they'd lost their original way of talking about it. They became spokespeople for a cause. There was nothing until I really got to Alexandra and her talents and her ability to find these people, these children, these adults, these whatever. I really couldn't get my arms around it. But I watched it now for the 400th time, and it really is right. It's right on. Thank you, Alexandra. And thank you, doctor. I mean, you told me when I was going wrong, so.
Well, I tried my best. I was really.
We all try our best, but
it was a team effort. Alexandra, what were the challenges? And because Sheila's being obviously a little bit humble here, she had, I think, way more of a concept and an idea of what this should be, what she wanted this to be, than she's letting on. What were the challenges in translating that into a film like this?
Well, first of all, I was so excited when she called me, and I will never forget. I was so excited because I was like, this is something that I care a lot about, and it's something that I have family members that have who are survivors of my husband's mother died by suicide. And I just felt like I really wanted to be able to tell this right. And so we really joined in that vision, but Sheila had a very strong idea of how she wanted it to be. And I think trying to figure out how to shape it so that it really was speaking directly to young people was something that was really, very important to both of us. And also to have them talking to each other was something that Sheila really wanted to have happen. Like, I want to have these people meet and I want them to talk, and we have to figure out how to make this happen. And it was during
COVID, of course.
Well, it was before COVID. So actually, it was a very difficult moment because we were sort of a third through shooting, and then COVID hit, and we had lined up, filming Abraham in Florida, and we were filming Gabi, and we had all these plans, and then all of a sudden we sort of did a hard left and pivoted, and the kids were incredible. They were willing to let us take over their iPhones and do all this stuff and meet on Zoom. So it was quite incredible, and just figuring out the words and talking to enough professionals. And Vic, you were so helpful and, really just incredibly, an incredible guide in this process for me and for Lindsay, my producer. But just this idea of how do you talk about these really difficult subjects in a way that these kids or young people won't turn it off. They won't, shut off, but they also won't get triggered, and they will listen and they will really connect. And so that was something that was a big part of all of our discussions. And we had many, many cuts and, different time lengths and different order. And, we went through it and we got there. So it was a big team effort.
I think when people see a finished film that fits together seamlessly, they don't often, and this is the goal, they don't feel how much thought and real decision-making went into how it is put together and what content is used. Joan, I think this is the first time you saw the film, and one of the things that I think was one of the core efforts was to make the film serious and really portray some of the risks and challenges that can lead young people to a place where they're struggling with suicidal thoughts or impulses, and at the same time convey the things that are helpful. And, very often when we do presentations with parents or even with other clinicians, we give these lists of, risk factors, and then we give lists of protective factors. And I think the goal, what this was striving for, was to actually tell those things as stories. So I guess I'll put you on the spot a little bit, since it's on your home turf here. How successful do you think the effort was? And can you say a little bit about what, some of the things you saw in terms of the way the film did really explicate what some of the challenges that these young people are struggling with? What are the multitude of ways that they got help? And in many cases, there were, several things happening, which is, again, something we were very much trying to portray.
Well, I just want to start by saying thank you to Vic and Sheila and Alexandra for really calling attention to such an important topic. As you all know, suicide is the second leading cause of death in our young people, and it's the first leading cause of death in some states. So it's a very serious problem that kills more of our children than any single medical illness. So calling attention to that is so important. And the stories were so touching. I think you really brought them out. And I just loved the sections towards the end where you were able to get people to tell their stories about how they changed their stories, how they accepted themselves and their experiences for what they were, even though they were painful, and went on to be in the moment and to build a life that they wanted to live. And one of the speakers even said that. And I just loved that, because I know from working with kids for so many years that the more you can help them to see that it's possible to get through that moment, that other people have done it, and who better than another kid to tell you how they've done it while you're still recognizing their own pain and experience, it's really great. I think of it oftentimes as we need to organize ourselves in our communities so that we provide protective seatbelts around our kids, so that when they have these intense emotional reactions that hurt so badly, we can keep them safe and help them move forward into the next moment when it won't hurt so badly. And it might even be great. And that came through towards the end so strongly. I just loved that. So thank you.
Thanks, Joan. Alexandra and Sheila, you've both made other films that have taken up issues around mental health. Alexandra, you've done a film about autism. Actually, that was presented here, and Sheila was involved in that too. And Sheila, you've done actually other films on depression, a very different project about suicide, a series on Alzheimer's disease. What's different about doing a film about suicide, and maybe particularly about youth suicide?
Harder than a lot of other films, because you're walking on a very treacherous ground. You don't want to start singing "The Sun Will Come Out Tomorrow," because the sun doesn't always come out tomorrow. It's just that, as one of the kids says, basically, I don't want to vanish. There's no hope for me if I vanish. And I think that's really what we try to do. I think the title, which we worked so hard on to try to come up with a title, it's not, it's each and every day, meaning that today you feel like, I guess I can say shit because I'm not on TV now. But I mean, if you feel like shit on Monday, it doesn't mean that Tuesday you might be able to find a tickle in something in life. And that being here, even with pain, there's a hope if you just face it each and every day. And that balance that Alexandra was able to get with a positive outcome, but not a sunshiny one necessarily. That the grapple and that it keeps going on. And the other thing I think that was so important in this film, having watched it at distance pretty much now, is friendship. This incredible friendship that it went out to a lot of people at MTV, and everybody gave comments, and they were, legitimate, and they had to do with standards and practices. And one guy I didn't even know wrote and said, I wish I had seen this before because I have a friend who took his life. And he was saying a lot of the things that they were saying, but I thought, oh, come on, have a drink. It'll be better tomorrow. He said, now I understand that it was a cry for help. So I think that Alexandra's film really touches that in very subtle ways. And I'm very grateful to her for making it. Thank you, Alexandra.
Thank you.
I know I tortured you.
No, you did not. No, you did not. She's the best. You're the best. And so like you're
just so everything matters so much, I
know.
actually felt very tearful watching it because I thought, oh my God, what I put Alexandra through making this thing.
Well,
Nothing
it's
is ever-
tough
We just
and
wanted to do it right.
inspiring to have high standards, right? I mean, that's
I
it's
didn't say I had them
complicated.
for myself. I said I had them for Alexandra.
Oh, for both. Yeah, I know better. Alexandra, what was different for you from making this film versus a film about autism?
Well, I do think it's a different, when with How to Dance in Ohio, the film that was about autism, you're not worried you're going to trigger people in the same way. And I do feel like there was a lot of responsibility, especially with that it was going to MTV, that it was going to be shown to young people, that it was by them, about that. It was the whole thing. So, we did a lot of research, and we tried to be very careful about casting and making sure that people were in a good place and vetting all of their support systems. But it was very different. I think it was very, it was more emotional. And I actually felt, I remember the first time that they all got together, we were on Zoom, and that was during COVID. And I kept listening to everyone thinking, everybody needs to hear you. Everybody, people who haven't even had mental health issues. Like, this is a moment in time where people who understand community, and they understand how to build it, and they understand themselves, and they know what their deficits are, their needs, they have so much to teach the rest of the world. And so there was really sort of an incredibly inspiring, it was an incredibly inspiring experience to make. And I love working with Sheila, and I love your standards, and I share them. And we would always figure out sort of how to talk about different things. And it was great.
So, Joan, can you say a little bit about what some of the risks are? I mean, what we know about, really some of the media and the way suicide is portrayed in media settings. What's at stake, and what are the problems? Why is it so difficult? Because I think it is significantly more difficult than dealing with other kinds of mental health issues.
Yeah, it is dangerous. And I appreciate how sensitive you were to that in creating this film, because we do have examples, unfortunately, where it really looks like media exposure has increased the suicide rate. And on the other hand, media exposure provides an opportunity to teach and to show people how you can get out of feeling so hopeless. And that's why I loved the stories that you had there, especially when it got to the points where they were talking about why they wanted to live and how they got through it. And like you said, you hit a really wonderful balance of validating and letting them express what they felt, and at the same time showing that you don't always feel that way. And I think that's really the challenge, because we have these data and they're pretty terrifying. And then we have these other data that shows that when you organize communities around suicide prevention, like we've done nationally with the Garrett Lee Smith Memorial Acts, that might be a really great new other film on these projects where we've gone into counties and states all across the country and put suicide prevention into action in different ways by bringing different evidence-based strategies into communities. And we saved lives. The mortality rates went down when these programs were in place. And when they went away, when they were discontinued because the grants ended, the suicide rates creeped up. So, we know we can make a difference, and I applaud you for trying to make a difference. And I'm curious whether you've gotten kid reactions to the film. Have you done any of that? We'd love to see some of that, actually. I would personally love to see some of that.
Yeah, no, we have. And by the way, this group, they now meet. They meet online, the group that was in the participants. Can I say one thing about the media that I think is important,
Please.
which is that in structuring a film that is preventative, was the mandate. When Sheila first called, she said, this needs to be a film that is preventative in nature, right? The entire thing is, how do you build a film that will carry that message inside of it? And there's something, it's inherently uncinematic to most people. So they think, oh, this is not cinematic because we're trying to keep a temperature not too high. And there is a way to find within that something very human and relatable, where you don't have to spike someone's temperature in watching, and it can be cinematic. So that was also a really interesting experience to find that balance.
So one of the things, go ahead, please,
That
Sheila.
makes sense? I don't know.
No, I was just
sure.
thinking about the if you feel like nothing, and you see people who feel like nothing, but they become something by the very nature of their suicide, it has that attractiveness that you walk a very sensitive line between likable people, real people, but not idealized to such a degree in their recovery and in their recognition. They planted a garden for this person. They did, suddenly the person had a library at school named after them. We had to stay away from anything like that. And yet we had to find likable, lovable people. So I think the casting, I hate to use that word about docus, but it's very, very true. The casting of people who are positive, but not idealized in their recovery to such a degree that you wanted to take your feeling of nothingness and duplicate it by imitating their suicidal tendencies. So it was a very delicate, difficult film. And, I'm glad to know you were successful, to you experts.
Me too.
Joan, does it feel like it was successful? What would you have changed in the film? Would you have done anything differently? I'm putting you on the spot because it's your home. You have the home court advantage.
Surely would do everything differently because that's the way I am, but I don't know what you know, so I probably would have totally ruined it.
I tried that, didn't work.
You did try to sort of, put the kibosh on it a few times.
Not this one, but many other times I just pulled out. I just knew I was going in the wrong direction. It's very hard.
One of the things I think that was unusual about a documentary about mental health or about a health subject, there's no narration, and there's precious little sort of factoids in there. Just in a few places you put in, a couple of framing pieces of information, but really very, very few. How was that decision made? And then I guess I'll ask Joan, does that feel like that was for young people a better way to engage them than presenting more sort of fact content in detail? So first, I'll ask Alexandra and Sheila, what made you decide to proceed that way?
I think there was a fear that the minute you had an expert speaking, that a young person would say, this isn't for me, and that someone who's their own peer, who's going through something that they has gone through something they're going through, or in some way that they can relate. It was also, in terms of casting, to Sheila's point, casting enough of a diverse participant pool, so that there was really something diverse in all their experiences, that there was really enough for someone to relate to something in everyone, was really important for us. And I think that I lost For some reason, I just lost what you were asking. Sorry.
The
Say it
idea
again.
that we didn't have cards that said
Oh,
76%,
It wasn't
23%.
information heavy, it was
Yeah.
story heavy.
I mean, I've never been drawn towards having, professional speaking, because my whole style has always been, how do you create the opportunity for someone to walk in someone else's shoes? And I do think that when you put an expert voice on it, it makes it very hard to get inside someone else's experience. So, I think for this, and especially for young people, I think that we both felt like this was better. And then our editor, we came up with this way of doing it through chats that was extremely helpful, that actually came out of chats we'd seen, in Oregon. So at the youth hotline. So we felt like that was a great way to get in all the different kinds of therapies, all the different kinds of things you can be doing, call someone, speak to someone, there were ways to do it that an expert could have actually gone on and said, and I think a young person just would have shut them off. That was our fear. I mean, my fear.
The other thing about this film that I noticed in watching it with other people, and Marissa, who works with me, we started talking after the cuts about things in our lives that are not part of the process of making a film, but suddenly we would tell each other, something about our family or a secret or something about something we did. And I have found that with this film more than almost any other film, it encourages people to talk about what hurts. And I think that was really very special. And I had not really seen that in the other films. They were more pedantic. They had a lot of cards, a lot of information, but they were for adults. And maybe we felt that would distance people from true stories.
So I'm having an association, remembering an old supervisor who said that when you make an interpretation that's on target, it evokes a memory. It evokes a story. And I, my sense is that that's what you were all experiencing.
Yeah.
Joan, what would you want young people to come away from in seeing this film?
Well, I wanted to say something else.
Oh, sure. Go for it. The floor is yours.
Say that it's really, this discussion is really interesting from the perspective of a professional, because one of the things and a mother and a person, right? But one of the things that's really interesting that's happened, particularly during COVID-19, when we're all like this, right? That's how we're taking care of our patients. We're more available to them because we can talk to them anytime and see their homes and meet their dogs and cats, and all of that is great. But, one of the things that has happened is that we've gone to much more using digital interventions, including a lot of what we call coping films. So there's these sites that people have developed, and I've even done a few little films myself, which don't compare, believe me, where we show kids coping models and adults. There's a great site for adults, which you might be interested in. I will send it to you so you can take a look at it, where people can go and it's full of coping models talking about what it feels like to be suicidal, what it feels like to come out of it, how skills have helped, what has helped them, addresses things like getting rid of firearms and other kinds of things. And they're very short little snips. And I wonder what your sense is of people's ability to watch for a long time, particularly those who you're most trying to reach, who are hurting.
Yeah, I think you're right that one thing we have learned from COVID is that we can really use these digital platforms way more effectively to help and educate parents and young people than we ever imagined. And there's a real sort of therapeutic connectedness that's potentially there. I know I feel like a therapist here. I know we're going to have to stop in just a minute. I'm getting the chat stuff. Does anyone have, again, the question that I asked Joan, or maybe Vicki, who's just come on, if we want people to come away with one thing from this film, anybody want to give a 30-second articulation of that?
I think that's a Joan.
I would say reach out to someone. If you notice that they're hurting, if your gut tells you they're in trouble, just reach out and ask if they're okay and let them know you care and be there.
Have the conversation, right?
Thank
It
you.
won't make it worse.
Thank you. I want to thank you all. This is such a beautiful film. It's really a gift. I hope that everyone has a chance to see it. It will be up on our website with this discussion. Alexandra, it was an honor to show a second film of yours.
Thank you.
You're a brilliant filmmaker, and you tell a story better than anyone that I've ever watched tell a documentary. So thank you for that. Sheila, thank you for making this film. Vic, thank you for telling us about the film and connecting us with everybody. Joan, for sharing all your wise knowledge and expertise. Very grateful to you all. I want to thank everybody that stayed on this Zoom with us. I hope everybody has a wonderful evening, safe, and look forward to seeing you on May 6th for our Open Mind Film Festival for high school students. We have 9 films that we're going to show that were made by student filmmakers, and they are really excellent. And then there'll be a discussion following. So I hope you'll all join us, and thank you very much for this gift.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank you
everyone.
so much.